those in future reference. My name is Daniel Bush. I'm a middle school and high school PE teacher over on the East Campus. I'm one of the leaders of the trip. I'll introduce our team here. All four of us are the leaders for the Verbier trip this year. I have Ray Kentish, also over at East, Gareth Richards, from here at Dover, and Victoria Gray, also from here at Dover. Between us, there's quite a few years of experience between running all sorts of different ski and snowboarding trips. Personally, this is my third of this one here at UWC. I've taught here at Dover for a little while and also over at East. I've been lucky enough to come along. This will be my third trip as a leader here. It's a previous photo there. So hopefully tonight is all about an information evening for you. If you have any questions, there's certainly a parent body and student body here that you can ask some questions around clothes and what you're going to do and all that sort of stuff. Out of interest, hand up here if you're a returning student. I only have 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, there's 5. There's a few of us here that are returning for at least our second or third times. Come on in, come on in. So the idea of tonight is to give you some critical information around, obviously, or when we're leaving and all those different things around arrangements, but we're also going to give you some advice on clothing, the expectations of what's going to happen for you each day, what's going to happen in your routines, and hopefully put at ease for some of you what's going to happen, and also excite some of you in terms of I'm really looking forward to this trip. For some of you, if you've been looking at the weather reports, they've had a lot of snow recently. Obviously, Germany and a few other ones have had some avalanches and things like that, but Switzerland has recently had quite a lot of snow. So fingers crossed it does stay in really, really good condition. So, first of all, I apologise. I know they always tell you don't put a lot of text on a presentation. I have put a lot of text on the presentation. I'm going to show you a Les Elf's video. That's one of their advertisement campaigns. This slideshow and all the videos and links, they will all be available for you to watch in the future if there's something you think you missed or you want to go back and have a look at. Okay? one of their promotional videos. They put together to give to schools and for you guys to get basically a feeling of what goes on one of the trips. There are a few things on there that we don't do, the trip to the castle and the chocolate factory. If we have different flight times, other than going into Zurich, if we went to Geneva, and that may happen in the future depending on flights, etc., that may become one of our options. That's often done when you have a layover or a little bit extra time, but as it is on our trip, we fly to Zurich and then we catch the bus from there over to Latsumas, so therefore there isn't that time there. So that may change in the future if you're back again on one of the other trips in a following year, etc. That may be one of the options that they offer. So from with us, what you actually get as part of the package, which I'm sure most of you are aware, is you get those 6 days of full ski. You get your accommodation, all flights, ski hire, which is your skis, your boots, and your helmet and your poles, all meals, 6 days with an instructor, and obviously that's dependent upon your level and ability as to where you go once you're there up the mountain. So you probably saw there was groups up really high up the top of the mountain, others are on the training slopes, others are doing time trials, all that sort of stuff we'll cover a little bit later, but it's obviously completely dependent on the level of your son or daughter and conditions also as to where you get on a mountain. We'll show you a map a little bit later of the Four Valleys region and just how big it is. For those that haven't been, there's something like over 450 kilometers of track, which compared to other areas around the world, that's a lot of areas that you can actually go and ski. I was mentioning before, there's 17 East students this year. That's the highest number we've had on this ski trip, leaving 24, so a total of 41 students with 4 staff members. Some flight information. We're meeting at the airport at 10:15 p.m. In an email to you, we will advise which terminal it is that hasn't been issued yet by Singapore Airlines. So when we do receive that information, we'll let you know where you need to meet at 10:15 p.m. That is a little over 3 hours before the flight, but we feel like just so we make sure everyone's got everything, passports, visas, everything else, we're asking to meet there at that time. Our outbound flight, we're meeting at, that's on the Friday of the break, right, for Chinese New Year. So just a reminder that we actually leave early on the Saturday morning, okay? So you're out there at 10:15 p.m. on the Friday to leave early morning on the Saturday. Yes, the information is there. There will also be further information. So SQ346, Singapore Zurich, leaving at 1:30, landing in Zurich at 7:50 in the morning. We then bus from there to Latsumas, where we have a ski fit, etc. Coming back the other way, we leave on the Saturday morning. It's a very early bus ride. We leave about 4 a.m. on the Saturday to get to the airport for about 7 o'clock or something, or around that sort of, although even a little bit earlier. So we have that 10:35 in the morning flight. Landing back here in your last day of your break, that's the Sunday morning at 0600. Alright, so you get the day to recover before you're back here at school. A little bit of sleep and catch up, hopefully. Alright. So we'll send a follow-up email with all those details for you to ensure that you're going where you need to go. A little bit about Les Elf. We do have, Gareth here has previously worked at Les Elf. Do you want to give a little bit more information around?
I went to an international school as a kid, and when I was 12, I used to go on all these trips as a student as well. And then when I was 18, I graduated and they gave me a job for my gap year. I worked as an instructor there. So this trip offers amazing amounts of experiences, not just skills for fun, but then you can actually work through it as well. So yeah, it's a great trip, and I fully endorse it. I'm really excited to work from the other side and be a teacher on the trip as well. So I'm really excited for this year.
Les Elf offer a variety of packages, etc. for us as schools. In the past, we've not always stayed at the same location. For those that might have been here previous years, we've stayed further down the mountain, right within the ski lifts themselves. Latsumas is a very, very child-friendly area. We have a short bus trip from the actual lodge. You could walk it, it's only a couple of 100 meters, but we catch the public bus that takes us up to the lift access, and from there you're up onto the mountain. There's a small map there, it's quite hard to read there with the venues for Les Elf in terms of Verviers, Latsuma, and Crans-Montagne. So our venue is this one here, which is Latsumas. It can house up to 52 or 53 students with staff. We're currently at 41, so 40 we're looking more at 45, 46 with staff. We've got a couple of other staff that are coming along also. So we're still not quite at capacity. In future years, if we were to get a further 10 or so students, then that could happen. So that's something that if you're coming back and returning. The venue itself is well accommodated. The rooms themselves are between 4 to 6 people, depending on the layout and design. So they're bunk style beds with an upper and a lower. They get cupboards, etc. We're going to talk about clothing and drying out. They have a dry room to put your boots and things like that get wet throughout the day. It has a very, very big kitchen and dining area. They put a big focus on teamwork, communication, collaboration, very much in the UW sense. So there's definitely a lot of time where the students themselves are mingling, talking to one another and socialising when they're back down from the mountain. Okay. But yeah, so there's a picture there of the bunk style beds, bathrooms, etc. And there's a very big dining hall, so everyone's able, it's much like this area here, everyone's able to dine at the same time. They offer levels from obviously beginner, intermediate and advanced, and for those parents that filled out the initial surveys, thank you very much, you would have allocated the level of ability for your son or daughter from 1 to 4. There's a couple of you who I've spoken to have been added who haven't filled that out. I might be calling you over the next couple of days just to get that information so Les Elf can prepare in terms of starting to arrange group members, etc. Okay, so if you haven't filled that out for me, I'll be in touch. Yeah, so small groups, they can be groups of generally 3 to about 6 as a max group with the ski instructor, and they may, depending on the weather conditions, where's best on the mountain, all those different things. This year we don't fall into the holiday time for Switzerland itself. So this is a good time for us to go. It means that if your son or daughter came last year, it was quite busy. We were there in their holiday time. It meant longer waits at the lifts. A bit heavier congestion on the bus. I think a few heads are nodding here. We missed a bus occasionally because it was full and it went past with people. We waited for the next one 5 minutes later and we hopped on. This year we shouldn't have that issue. We're outside that window of time, so it should be fantastic for us as long as the conditions are good. A few reasons that you might go to a Les Elf one and meeting students from around the world. The instructors come from 60 plus nationalities and the students as well. Gaining social skills, learning new sports, increasing self-confidence and self-management, and learning about yourself and your strengths. And that's definitely, obviously, along the UWC path as well. Okay, what might a typical day look like for a student? There's some of you here, hand up if you're new, this is your first time on the trip this year. Great. Okay, so some information. I know you might have spoken to some people here who have already been, but here we go. So there's an early rise, 7:45. Yes, you're probably up a bit earlier within your rooms. That's your breakfast time, etc. You're going to come down. Make sure you get a hearty breakfast. We want you to have a fair bit of food. It's going to fuel you for the rest of the day. So it's a communal breakfast. You go up and there's a muesli and all sorts of stuff. Some mornings it's hot food and etc. Porridges, etc. Around 9 o'clock, you're hitting the slopes. You're getting on the bus maybe 15 minutes before then and getting up for the first lifts. All right, that's what we try for with your instructor. Generally, as long as your ability is as it's listed, that instructor will be your instructor for the entire week. All right, so they can grow with you in terms of getting to know you and giving you advice, etc., on how to improve and all those different elements that come into it. So your group should remain the same for the course of that week. So you get about 3 hours of instruction out there on the slopes, depending on the day. If it's the first day, then obviously there's an initial one. You might go to the baby slopes, and then from then over the next coming days, you start to progress up the mountain. So you might have an actual whole day up there in terms of 3 hours up there before you actually meet for a common picnic lunch. Often they have a couple of different venues up on the mountain that are theirs. They own them. They go there and they unpack and everything else for everyone. So they're able to house the majority, almost everyone up there at the same time. And then 1 o'clock, you're going back to the snow again. 4 o'clock snack. Around the afternoon, when the lifts start to close, etc., we come back down the mountain and we start to get some recreation time. Where we're living in Latsumas has an ice rink just up the road, and some shopping and a few other things as well. So that's often the pastime in the afternoon. They get some time to go up and have a look around at the local shops, maybe buy some things for family, mum and dad, some chocolate and things like that to bring home for you, as well as have an ice skate and a few other activities. In the evenings, and I'll touch on the Les Elf package. They provide everything for us. So they pick us up in their buses from the airport. They have a dual team where they have instructors that take you up the slopes. They also have activities coordinators that are Les Elf staff, and their job is to entertain the students whilst we're there. So in the afternoons they might run activities, but they're also in the evening running. Last year there was like a mystery murder scene and you had to solve the problem. They've had discos, a Latsuma challenge. They did a torchlight walk last year where you walk around the local neighbourhood and there was a big candle torch and you get to have a look around at all the different venues and things like that around the local area. Some other things they might do: quiz nights, karaoke nights, creative nights. So there's a lot of different things in there from a social point of view that's really good for bonding, getting to know everyone, etc. And it is a big laugh. I didn't include the picture. They asked me to be with a murder mystery, so I had a big wig and suits on last year. I didn't put that picture in. Yes. In bed around 10 o'clock. Parents, please be assured, last year I didn't recall anyone being awake after that. They were so tired from the day skiing. So they were, quite a few were very, very tired at that time. Well, they made no noise, if that's the case. We are going to touch on it. We are going to talk about it. In the case of an accident, we're on a ski trip. People are skiing. You are going to likely fall over. You're going to have times where you might feel like, oh, I've fallen over on my butt, or I've got really wet, or I've grazed myself, etc. We're all first aid trained here as a trip leader. We go along to trip training. So from a staff point of view, we have that there. We are not necessarily with your son or daughter, and nor can we be at every point on the mountain. All of the Les Elf staff as well are also trained. So from a point of view, if your son or daughter is injured, we're notified. They have our mobile phones. We all have data and etc. on our phones. So we will have that. We're accessible on the mountain. A member of staff of our staff will be notified from the Les Elf team. There is obviously they carry first aid kits, and in that area where they have lunch and a few other things, they have first aid kits and all those sorts of things for us. Okay. If your son or daughter needs to be seen by a doctor, they have quite a few down in the Matsuma's area itself, and that's our initial port of call in terms of first aid. Hopefully it doesn't need it, but if taken by car, ambulance, or even airlifted from there, they can be. Okay, for your assurance, it can be, and we haven't had to yet, but it is there available. You've filled your details out on iPal for your son or daughter, so please make sure if you've changed passport numbers, if you've done if there's any allergies that you haven't listed, medications, etc., all those things now need to be listed through the iPal system, so please make sure that's up to date. As a note, doctors in the past, when there has been an injury, they are extremely cautious. Extremely cautious. We've had students with strains and sprains, they have still put their foot in a cast. Alright, so just as a heads up, they err on the side of caution. Those people were then not able to ski the remainder of those days. If that does happen, we said a member of staff will remain with them in the lodge. They'll go out and do some daily activities if they can. The bus may take them to a local area where they can be either pushed around, etc. So hopefully that's not the case. Fingers crossed, touch wood, everything else, that it's all okay. But just to rest assured, we do have those procedures in place. Communication. So I know I've just mentioned it then. I counted, so I've been trying to register for the flights and everything else and give the ticket information over. There are 7 people out of the 41 with an expiry passport in August, which is 6 months after the cutoff, right? So if that's your son or daughter, that is fine. You don't have to go and get a new one. But if you do, or you are in the process of getting a new one, please can you email me? My email is dab@gaps if you get a new passport, and update it on Sims and let me know. So I know I counted them today. There were 6 or 7 of you with a passport that is expiring in the near future. We have all the information around medical information. So if you have an allergy, if you have medication, all of those things will be given to a member of staff when you check in for the flight, and we'll be the ones that will administer that on a daily basis in the mornings, at night, etc., whenever it needs to be administered. Okay. Updates on the trip. There is a link here, and we'll send it in an email. I'll show you that in a sec. We've created a portfolio, so I know my students here within the room have that portfolio system. Definitely at East, I'm not sure at Dover. I'm not seeing any heads nod. Do you have a portfolio system if you're in middle school here at Dover? I'm not sure. It's basically like your own blog area. So this will be our update system. It is a website, and we'll be able to put that Les Elf video from before, and further information. This is the information from tonight. That spreadsheet is in there. I've got videos from the previous Verbier trips in there. I will get some quotes this year, and that'll fill up this bit here, so what it's like in the past. This will be where you receive, parents, the live photos from the day. Alright, so from in here, I will post photos daily of the groups, whether they be doing nighttime activities, up on the slopes, lunchtime, whatever it might be. You'll be able to go here and see live pictures each day appear in a slideshow. Okay, so that'll be for your reference there. That's one from last year's group. When we're up there, we had a day that was overcast and quite a lot of snow. It was bitterly cold and windy, which we're going to get to in a minute around clothing. There is a link there where you can pull out your name and email and subscribe to that link, and it will shoot you any information if anything's updated. Okay, so that link will come out in an email, hopefully tonight when we go organise this one. I'll hand over to Gareth a little bit to talk about some clothing. I'll put the list up of some stuff
that'll
if
be
you
good.
can talk
Yeah,
about.
sure. I think one of the most important things we can get onto here is just having a look at what kind of clothing. If you haven't gone skiing before, or you have, you're not sure what to buy, we've got loads of stuff that you can come and have a look at and touch. Starting from the top, the thing on the left, waterproof shoes and boots. Most people, I assume, that's going to be something that you rent, but I think maybe some might bring their own.
Some might have their own. Yeah, we had in the past, in last year, people just bring joggers or sneakers as what they wanted to wear around in the snow outside of the Latsuma's venue itself. We highly recommend that they're waterproof shoes, right? It may be snowing when you're there. You may take a little bit of time to walk a couple of 100 meters up the road, and we don't want you walking around with wet and cold feet all the time. And if that's your only pair of boots, we want them to be waterproof. Okay.
Which kind of leads us on to a little bit on heating and kind of drying your clothes at night. Once you come off the mountain, a lot of stuff is going to be wet, so make sure you kind of manage yourself there. If you can prevent that, minimum of 3 of these ski socks. So like ski socks are going to be very, very different to like the standard socks. They're going to be woolly, they're going to be a little bit thicker. Maybe not just for warmth, but maybe a little bit more for comfort as well. Like if you're renting boots, sometimes I think these guys can vouch for it. It gets a bit uncomfortable if you don't wear them. So what I would suggest for students, when you go down and rent your boots for the first time, put your ski socks on, and that way they're going to fit properly with what you're going to be wearing, and they're going to be maybe gives you an idea about how comfortable they're going to be. You can put several socks on and it still be comfortable. I would probably suggest that if you're renting boots, maybe 2 of these might be fine. I wouldn't say a minimum of 3. You could even go a maximum of 8 if you wanted to. I mean, they're probably going to get wet, so more is better. Thermals are amazing. They keep you really, really warm in super, super cold conditions. So a high quality thermal is going to be really useful. Decathlon do really high quality stuff for relatively cheap. The same at Uniqlo. Right, so if you know about Uniqlo around Singapore, that's a really easy place to get all of your kind of undergarments from, and relatively cheap, so I suggest you can go there. Ski jacket, the Zelf do rent some stuff, right?
Yeah, so I've got down here, so for 108 Swiss francs, you're able to rent the pants and jacket. So if you're sitting here and saying, I don't want to go buy that right now, whether it doesn't fit anymore or whatever, or I can't get it what I want in last minute, that's paid once there. Okay, so your children will need to have that converted, either do it at the airport, etc. And for 150, they can rent goggles, gloves, jumper, and socks. That's fairly high prices. You should be able to go to Decathlon and get those items for less than that, right? A lot less than that. So we're not saying you have to go down this path, but if you want to, you can. But that is cash brought to them. Okay.
Yeah. I mean, on the back of that as well, the stuff that they provide there is really high quality. So it's all from Scott, am I right?
Yes,
Sponsored by Scott.
Yeah.
Scott, and it's a really, really high quality brand. So you know that what you're going to get there, even though you're paying a higher price, is definitely going to be the stuff you want. If you go to Decathlon, all right, it might be a little bit lower level. For example, the goggles, right? So these goggles have like a double layer, all right? So when you get a little bit sweaty and then it gets really cold and that fogs up, if you've got 1 layer of goggles, then that's going to steam. And these kind of limit that because they've got 2 layers in there, and there are different levels of basically get what you pay for. So if you want to go and buy your own stuff that's cheaper, go for it. But maybe if you rent them, they might be a little bit high quality, and you might want to also weigh up if your students are going to be going skiing next year and the year after and the year after, and that might be something you might want to invest in.
the decathlon range, I purchased a few Under Armour garments and things like that, so thermals, etc. often have a rating. So they all come with a rating of what temperature it's recommended for. Okay, so just make sure when you're purchasing stuff, you just have a squeeze at that.
In particular, we can talk about jackets. I think that's one of the most important things. Okay, so Gore-Tex is the material that you have to have. Right, that is a breathable, completely waterproof material. There are different qualities, but if it says Gore-Tex, it probably does a good enough job for what our students are going to be doing. Okay, so you can come up here and feel this and maybe get an idea about what you're kind of looking for. But something that just says waterproof is not really good enough for skiing. If it says Gore-Tex, then it's probably better. And all the shops we're going to put up later, they will not lie and say they're putting something that's Gore-Tex that's not. If you go to Bangkok maybe and you go to the market, you might find something that says Gore-Tex, but it's not. Same thing goes for pants, all right? Less of a worry if you're skiing, because that doesn't really get hit so much by the snow. But in heavy conditions, is probably going to get saturated anyway, all right? It's pretty rare to go for a whole week at the time of year we're going and not have a heavy snowfall day and then be able to be completely dry. It doesn't really happen, even if you've got like the highest level equipment. So you're going to come back, make sure it gets dry. Next day, wake up. We've got a great drying room. It's going to be fine the next day. And instructors are kind of clever enough to understand what level of intensity students are going to be able to handle, right, and resilient. So if students are starting to get really, really cold, instructors will take them away immediately off the mountain and get them hot chocolate, keep them somewhere nice and warm, keep them happy and enjoying their time. So that's like one of the worst things that we want. We don't want students coming on this trip not enjoying themselves and not wanting to come back, because we're all PE teachers and we want to make sure they have a good time. A day pack. Day pack does not have to be gigantic. This is mine I will use. This is for like little trips around the day, potentially going into town, not taken on the mountain, I'm assuming. You do not need to take anything on the mountain. Your instructor has everything, but they are going to be useful for maybe shopping experiences or just heading off into town and taking like a jacket, or if you get hot on the walk, taking off your jumper or something like that, maybe getting layers.
Most students use that as a carry-on on the plane.
Yeah.
Right? So you've got your things you want to listen to on the plane or book and all that sorts of things.
The most effective by far way of keeping yourself, your heat maintained on the mountain is a layering system. Right, so something at the bottom, kind of a mid-layer jumper, or maybe even like a micro puff that they call this. It's like a super insulate material. You'll get these at Uniqlo as well. I think they're like $100 or something, but it's amazing. It really does it's super, super lightweight, but it keeps heat in really, really quick. And then if you get hot, then you just take that off and you've got your jacket on top anyway. Right? The instructors will quite happily take off garments and store them in their backpack for students as well. So layer up in the morning. I would suggest like a thermal, then like a micro puff or a fleece like this, and then like a shell. So something that's not insulated on top. Because the worst thing would be if you had like a super thick insulated jacket and then you can't take it off because that's the waterproof bit. And then you take off all of your heat and then you're left in a t-shirt. And that doesn't really work. So a shell and some sort of waterproofing with an undergarment underneath. Talked about ski goggles. Neck scarf, yeah, I mean that's pretty standard. That's going to be bog standard anyway. There's a company called Buff, which is pretty useful. They're kind of used in multiple different ways, but there's not too much technicality to that. And ski gloves. Ski gloves can get technical. Yeah, I don't know if you want to talk about those.
Yeah, we had some students last year, and even some staff as well, that we'd have a day of rain. We got really, really wet. If your inner glove, etc., gets really, really wet, it's one of the most uncomfortable feelings when you're up on the mountain is having cold, wet hands, right? You really don't want to have that. So if there was something you were going to go and get something of better quality, jacket and the glove would probably be my two opinion, and goggles. They're probably the three things that I'd say. Actually, if you can go a little bit more on or get the next level of, they'd be the ones, okay? I personally would bring 2 or 3 pairs of gloves. You don't have to have that many, but it's a preference. I know the last thing I want to do is put wet gloves on the next morning, okay, and have that for the day.
Other than that, I think all the stuff on the right-hand side is fairly...
They're fairly stock standard. Please bring extra pairs, underwear especially. It's 8 days, you don't need to bring that many. Bring more, okay? So if you get wet, the last thing I want you doing is, putting on wet stuff again the next day, right? Sounds straightforward, but I guarantee there are people that will say to me, I've got nothing left, it's all gone, it's all dirty, it's all wet, right? It's all smelling in a corner, right? You have to be responsible here for your own equipment, okay? They do have a very good drying area, so please make sure if it does get wet, you can speak to one of us, you can put it out yourself, just be responsible on that front.
If you have any questions in detail about any of these things, or you're going to order something online and you're not sure, shoot me an email, GRI, and I'll just send you back if it's good enough. Or if you're going to Decathlon or something, you want to take a photo and then send me that, I'm more than happy to have a look at it and say yes or no. Okay? Other than that, like I said, you can kind of have a feel and have a look at some of this stuff. Go from there. Outdoor Life is probably the most expensive thing on there, but they have really high quality equipment. And the other ones are more than acceptable as well. We wouldn't have put them up there if they're not great. Yeah. What was the
so
one?
Decathlon's come along in the last couple of years, and there's now a couple of sites around. I heard from another member of staff that if you order online through Decathlon, not go into store, if you order online, there is apparently a UWC code to get you a couple of % discount, right, if that's ordered online. If you go into the shop, that's not valid, apparently it's only on. So I will find out that for you tomorrow or even tonight, and I'll get back to you in that original email to find out that code. I've recently been to Queensway and World of Sport. It's seasonal, it does depend on what's there. Yes, you'll get outdoor or waterproof boots and things like that there, but you're not going to be able to go necessarily and get a lot of the Gore-Tex jackets. But it does depend on the branch and how big the venue is. I was in at Paragon in World of Sport, and they had all of the Gore-Tex jackets and things. I was at another one, and it was much smaller. It was like an outlet discount shop for water sport. It didn't have. So please be mindful of where you go. Yeah. So these are all in the slideshow that you'll be able to access. If you haven't heard of them or you have any questions, you can reach us in terms of that.
Yeah, I don't think.
And there's a photo from down at Verviers where we take the students there as well. So they put that up in the last couple of years. It's an excellent sign there. So that was the teachers that went last year, for those that might recognise Mr. Taylor, Miss Law, I'm not sure, and Mr. Murray's over there on the right hand side. But yeah, I guess now we can open up to the floor. Is there any burning questions around things?
Cash.
Yeah.
Kids use on.
Yeah, so they do have time.
Managed.
They do have time. So other than the money, if they are buying or renting gear, they need that in cash. Okay, so if they're going to rent the jacket and pants for 108 Swiss francs, or everything, goggles, gloves, etc., for 150, they need that. On a daily amount, I would not be asking for more than about $30 in terms of what really the only time they're going to get is to go in the afternoon. They might go to shops, they might want to buy a hot chocolate or some food, lollies, snacks, or a present to bring home. So there's a minimal amount. Less is better in this instance, because we don't want them walking around with large amounts. Okay.
Are they going to keep their own money?
Sorry?
Are they going to keep their own money?
So we have a safe in the Les Elf where we're able to keep their wallet, etc. They do not have access to that up on the mountain. So the idea is they can come back after their day skiing, they can get access to those things, and they can take them up to go shopping. So yes, they'll be responsible for money, but not when they're up skiing. Okay, so by the time when they're during the day and they're up on the slopes, they're in the hands of the Les Elf staff and us. They don't need to worry about any money for drinks or anything like that. Yep, sure.
So, are they allowed to go off on their own?
So yeah,
if they want to just.
So you're saying, like, for example, in the morning, can they go off and do their own run, or anything like that?
If they feel like the group is a little bit too high level, too low level, and they just wants to kind of do some runs.
So the short answer to that is no. In terms of the Les Elf staff are responsible for each of the students within their group. The Les Elf staff are very, very good. They'll take into consideration the level of the group. So the more advanced groups will typically go up the mountain earlier in the day, in the week, etc., and be challenged with activities up there. If, for example, it's a really, really good group, then they'll be able to go on some of the black runs and those sorts of things. If there are students who they feel would not cope with that, they'll move them to another group where they're at a more suitable level.
There'll be enough breakdown and.
Definitely, I guarantee that. They're very, very good at that. Yeah.
And what about afternoon activities? They can just kind of go.
They can have a bit of a choice. So there's multiple Les Elf staff that will run the afternoon activities. So they may offer a trip to the local shops and a trip to the ice skating rink, and the students will be able to divvy their a bit of choice in that matter. Yeah. Does that answer your question? Yeah.
Yep.
So they're not allowed. They're definitely not allowed to go off by themselves.
But
do
when,
a
when they
run.
go out to town, they kind of roam around.
They're with a staff member, so they'll be told in an area, please stay within this area here, please meet back in 15 minutes or 20 minutes, or whatever it might be. The ice rink itself is located right near the lift, and it's a very easy area. It's situated, there's a lift and there's an area, sorry, the ice skating rink, there's an area that's very easy to see.
Is there a swimming pool?
No swimming pool. Nope. Yep. Certainly can. Alright, you certainly can. In terms of taking up on the day, the Les Elf staff and ourselves will have our phones and things like that around. We will take photos during the day. On site, when you're up on the mountain, I can't remember students taking their own camera up there on the day, but if there's a photo you really, really want, make sure you talk to your instructor and they can get that for you. Your instructor can film it, etc., and then shoot you that in the evening or in the afternoon when you come back down.
You probably could even give your camera to your instructor.
Yes.
And that might even be better for you. You can just film you skiing.
Yeah.
So you can film
Does that make sense? So typically we would say you're not going to be skiing with the camera around your wrist and saying I'm just going to film myself. They'd be with the instructor and they'd film you on your camera and then they give it back to you when you come back down from the mountain. And you can also use it for afternoon and nighttime if you want to film the activities and the disco or whatever else. Yeah. Yep.
Last year there was a swimming pool, so this year is that not?
I can chase it up for you. I personally didn't go to the swimming pool, so I will chase that up for you. Yeah, so I'll chase it up for you because if that is the case, then there would need to be some swimmers brought. Okay, so I'll include that in the email. I'll get back to you. Yeah.
I have a question around level. So
Yes.
will the instructor test the level of everybody?
Yeah, so on the initial day, so we get the ski fit on the Saturday afternoon, that gets all your gear sorted and everything else. We make sure everyone is suitable to go up the mountain. That also includes the instructors checking your jacket. They ask you to come down with all your gear, just to make sure that they can check that it's adequate for the next day's activity, right? That it's thick enough, that it's warm enough, that it does what it's supposed to do. They will then on the Sunday, when you first go up, you'll go up in your allocated groups, what you've told me, 1, 2, 3, or 4, for the level of ability, right? If they feel it's not appropriate, if your son or daughter needs to go up or down, they will move, okay? So they'll do a series of tests, yeah? Sleeping arrangements. So the bedding is, we have rooms of 4 to 6. Obviously they are same-sex rooms and floors. I will be putting out an email list to the students themselves. We're going to ask that they are able to potentially buddy up. We may do this we were discussing this when we first meet for the flight. When we're checked in, we will arrange the rooming list then and there to actually send off to Les Elf. Does that answer your question? So rooms are 4 to 6. If they really want to be with a friend, they can be, but they are girls' rooms and boys' rooms, obviously. But yes. And there's a staff member on each floor as well. Okay, the staff members are mixed around in the rooms. Okay, mixed around in their own room, but on the floor.
Are they packing instructions, the kind of suitcase or bags they can take?
Check-in bags, is that what you're referring to? So they're allowed to take, SQ are up to 30 kgs, so you can take as big a bag as you like to fit your items in. A reminder, it does need to go from the airport, taken through the airport at the other end in Zurich, put on a bus, and then carried to your room. You're not going to be wheeling it hundreds of meters or kilometers, but it does need to be transportable. Okay? By you. Yeah. Yeah. Mr. Richards! Exactly. But yeah, so we're asking you to take adequate clothing and amounts of things to last you the week in terms of, so I understand you're going to have a pretty full bag by the time you bring all these items for enough for a week of skiing. Okay, so we understand there's going to be a pretty big bag. Yeah. Anything else to add? No? If there's no other questions, feel free to meet one another and have a chat. We're up here if you want to have a private discussion about anything. Yeah?
Only the one you said for the letters, I don't think we received that.
So yeah, so you can come up and talk to me. I've got a spreadsheet here with that information. Okay, thank you very much for tonight. We're looking forward to a good trip. See you on Friday.